everyone, and welcome once again to Netflix Roulette. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Eric.
Eric chose our movie for this time, and Eric, what'd you pick?
I picked Tokyo Godfathers by Satoshi Kon.
This is an anime, and I'm not, as a lot of people know about me, I've not seen a whole lot of
You
anime.
hate
I've
the
seen
Japanese.
I do not hate the Japanese. In fact, I find Japanese culture really fascinating. It's just not something that I always completely get as a consumer. You know what I mean? Like I don't always enjoy it, but I like certain things. And to my in my defense, I took a course in college called Japan After 1945, which was one of the best courses I took, and learned a lot about the history of what Japan was like after the occupation and how westernized it became, and why they were so into Western culture, and how a lot of this kind of stuff, came about in the first place, which is absolutely fantastic, and really interesting. And I learned a lot about Godzilla because the guy who taught it, a professor at KU by the name of Bill Sutsui, is a Godzilla scholar. He's written books about Godzilla.
Really?
Yeah, and it was really interesting. And we watched the original, which I had never seen before.
Oh,
That time I've
it's
seen
really
it
good.
since. It's great. Yeah, it's fascinating and a really good movie. But anyway, so Tokyo Godfathers. Eric, why did you pick this?
Um,
Just out of curiosity.
because I like some of Satoshi Kon's other work, and I'd never seen this.
And this came out in 2003,
And
and
and it's just about three bums who find a baby, so I thought it would be more up your alley than something more anime-y.
really, why would you why would you think that?
Because I going into it, I was like, oh, this is probably like a character piece about these three characters, and
Well, it kind of is that.
well, yeah, but like I was certainly expecting a little bit more straightforward than what it turned out to be. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's very briefly mention what the movie's about, because I imagine a lot of folks listening probably won't have seen this. Would you give a brief plot synopsis, Eric, since you picked this one?
sure. So we have three homeless people, which is Jin, Hana, and Miyuki, and they find a baby in the garbage, and they're kind of a family unit. Um, they're always together. They seem to live together. Um, and after that, it's kind of meandering. Like, there's not really a plot for a good chunk of this movie. It's kind of that just them kind of vaguely looking for the parent of the baby. One of the three of them is a homosexual, and he wants to be a mother, and he's never going to get to be a mother because he's a guy. Um, so he wants to keep the baby, and then each of them kind of have in-depth backstories that kind of play throughout the film and you learn about throughout the film. Um, and then at the end, they give the baby to the wrong person who's a mother that had lost her baby in childbirth and had stolen another baby. Um, and then they save the baby and they're dubbed the godfathers of said baby.
And the big thing Eric left out is just that most of everything he just mentioned happens by complete coincidence.
Yes, this is a lot of coincidences. It's very Dickinson-y.
And the baby at the end is saved by a miracle.
Yes. Oh, actually, one thing that I want to say, right, starting off with this,
Yeah,
when I first said it last time, which feels like forever ago now, um,
yeah. It's been a little while since we've gotten
I said
together.
it was a Christmas movie. It's not a Christmas movie. It's a New
Okay.
Year's movie, which makes perfect sense because in Japan, Christmas and New Year's are reversed. Christmas is the romantic holiday. New Year's is the family holiday. Uh,
Oh, okay. That makes a great deal more sense.
yes. Um,
Sure. I mean, there is some talk about Christmas, obviously because of all of the religious themes in the movie,
yeah.
and also because you have to have a supernatural being working behind the scenes in this movie to make this plot work at all.
Yeah.
And I gotta
But
say that
it
while
never it never comes out and says that. There's no like narration that's like, sometimes there's grander forces than you can imagine, or you never like cut away to like a benevolent being, which I feel like this kind of movie, if we were to make it in America, would open with a narration about inexplicable forces and how they can affect our lives.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have the thing all the way through the movie where Hana is constantly interpreting it that way. She keeps saying, or he rather keeps saying that the baby is lucky and that
It's God's
Jesus
gift.
loves it and all of that. I'm sorry, what's that?
It's God's gift.
It's God's gift, yeah, but also that it's lucky because it keeps getting saved in all these weird situations and that kind of thing. I also, by the way, really like that line when Jin says, "Well, if it's so lucky, then what was it doing in the trash?" There's I think all of the really good quips come from that character.
He's my favorite of the three.
Absolutely, yeah. Anyway, but going back to the religious thing, yeah, you're right that obviously there's not a narration coming out and saying this is what's going on. At the same time, at the end, clearly, obviously, there's some kind of majestic force at work.
Yeah.
You have that kind of Disney sort of ending of everything works out for no good reason, just because we want a happy ending, but it's more deliberate about it because it's like it's this slow motion. Here comes this wind, and it comes out like the hand of God
Well,
and
and
drops.
it's yeah, it seems if this happened at the end of a Disney movie, I'd feel like it was cheap. It feels completely part of this here.
Well, yeah, I'm of two minds about it, right? Because it's a movie about this baby, this random baby out of nowhere that not only brings these three people closer together, but also like it brings all of them to an understanding and a kind of ending point in all of their backstories that they never thought they would get before. And it's about uniting people. So they find this baby, but then they're each reunited with someone from their past that has a lot to do with the reason that they're homeless. And it would have been, if I were putting something like this together, I would have tried to have done it in such a way where you didn't have to have all of these coincidences to make that happen. I think the idea of this baby brings these people together, and then there's all these interesting parallels with all of the people in their past lives that they have to reunite with. Would be a lot more interesting than the baby shows up and conveniently every time they go someplace they meet somebody that was important to them. But at the same time, the movie is at least deliberate about it. It knows it's doing that. It's not trying to trick us into thinking that that it's clever about it or
Well, this
something.
isn't the kind of thing where like something happens and like you're like, well, isn't that a coincidence? That is this entire film. Every single thing that happens is some kind of coincidence that ties into one of their backstories or ties into something else that happened in the film.
Yeah, I mean they randomly find Jin's daughter as a nurse in the hospital, and another big one is the woman that they're looking for that they think is this baby's mother. Just they just walk up on her when she's about to commit
That's
suicide.
one of my favorite shots where they walk by and in the background you just see this girl get up on the railing and then they stop and walk back. I was like, I wonder if because
I found myself wondering if that was even going to be part of the story.
I
Like
wondered
I
if that was just like, oh well, this happens.
I wondered if they were just walking past this woman that was about to jump and commit suicide, and maybe they didn't even see her.
Yeah, I had the exact same thing. I'm like, that's really interesting. And then when they go back, I'm like, oh okay.
It was almost more interesting before it became a plot point.
Yeah, yeah.
But the way they set it up was kind of cool. So yeah, I mean, it is a movie about coincidence. I feel like it's unusual in that a lot of movies that I see like this are a are kind of the big question about fate versus free will. This movie doesn't question it, and it doesn't come down the side it usually would. It's fate. Everything's fate,
Right.
and it's okay with that.
It's a very
And I think
optimistic
that's
movie, I think.
I think that's kind of fascinating. It I don't want to say that it's necessarily a Christian movie because we don't really know what the force is. We don't know if Hana is right about what the
Right,
Force
right.
is, but but it definitely has this kind of moral at the end of everything works out in the end for the people who make the right choices.
Right.
And I don't know ultimately what I think about that, because early on in the movie I felt like it was trying to take kind of a good hard look at um, the underbelly that society likes to pretend isn't there.
It's a lot like Spawn. Um, well, I think the film's really optimistic, and I think it's really interesting in how it presents the optimism because it presents itself through the underbelly of society. Um,
And when I say underbelly, I just mean we like to kind of pretend like homeless people aren't there. I don't mean like
well,
drug
it's
culture.
not just homeless people. There's also the is he okay? Here's something that I want to bring up. When I picked this movie, I assumed it was dubbed because everything else by Satoshi Kon I've seen has been dubbed. It's subtitled, and I get the impression it's a really, really literal subtitling. Um, so there's some certain lines that are somewhat kind of questionable in context. So they constantly refer to which one is it? Hana
Yeah.
as a homo. I get the impression that he's a transvestite, right? He dresses
Uh,
up as a girl.
yes, I'm positive he's a transvestite, because there is a line that Jin has. Now, he's snarky about it, but I get the sense that he knows more about Hana than we do. He early on, and I forget what the line is, but he has a snarky line about surgery. And I get the sense that maybe in his past, Hana had reconstructive surgery.
Okay.
I might be wrong about that, but if I'm remembering, there is a line about it. So, that I don't know. I could be wrong.
I would actually like to see either another sub by somebody else or a dub that maybe does a little bit of the what's the word? Not changing to the colloquialisms, but I really felt like this was almost like a really raw sub. So there was a couple of things where I thought maybe it was lost on me. Like specifically the constant use of homo, I was like, what would that word be kind of adapted to our language as opposed to just translated? Um,
Yeah,
and obviously there's that whole thing with the Japanese. One of the things about Japanese humor is that they have no sense of irony, but they love puns.
yeah,
Um, obviously translated, if there's any puns in this movie, I don't get any of them because they're not puns when they're translated.
yeah. I didn't catch any of that either.
Oh,
But that's not to say that even in the translation that they gave us, there's nothing funny in
oh
the
no, no,
film.
no, I'm not saying that at all. I would like to see a slightly more naturalistic translation.
On the other hand, somewhat counter to what you're talking about, there was specifically one thing that kept coming up that I thought was really interesting, because of course I don't know anything about the Japanese language, and I thought it was interesting that and this wasn't in the subtitling. They would use a different word a lot of the time, but in like because they kept saying hobo,
Yeah,
and earlier Eric was talking about homo, but I'm talking about hobo. Whenever they were talking about homeless, whenever they would translate the word homeless, what was really interesting about that is that in the Japanese language we were hearing, they kept saying the English homeless.
yeah, and there's a couple
It,
of words that
it,
they say home
it
or
made
that
me
they
wonder
say in American. I think
if
father.
that's a standard. It kept making me wonder if that's a standard like way that they say that in Japanese, because it seems like homeless would be kind of a standard word you'd have a word for.
Yeah, I don't. I know that it's really popular to throw like American words in things. Like when you listen to Japanese music, a lot of times there's like a phrase that's in English. And I know that's kind of seeped into Japanese culture.
They just didn't do it all that often here. It was mostly just that word that I caught.
They say when she's talking to the Spanish woman, she says father and I think police.
Oh,
It's
that's
just his
right.
father,
Yeah.
policeman. Um, so I think there's on some level certain words that are just, I don't know, maybe known there or commonly used there. They're American words. I don't
Yeah.
know all of the intricacies. I know other things I've watched subtitled, they do occasionally use American words. I don't know. I, I don't know what the context is, type of thing. Like a lot of times we'll use Japanese words to make something sound like cool or mysterious, or read any '90s American comic. Um, and I always got the impression that was kind of how it was in Japan, was they just threw in like American words to make it sound exotic, but that's not how it is here at all. So I have no idea.
Um, Eric, one of the big things that I kept thinking through this was, it reminded me of a feeling I've had a lot in recent years whenever people will talk about how popular animation is in Japan versus America, and I just thought this all the way through watching this. How much I wish that we did more serious adult films like this in America, because we don't get to see a lot of these kinds of landscapes and things the way that they're presented here in animation. And I wasn't like turned off at all or anything by the heaviness and weightiness of the subject matter while looking at this in animation, because it's not like ultra stylized. It looks really realistic.
This is a gorgeous film.
It's really pretty. And I kept watching it thinking, wow, this looks real. Not like the drawings look like actual reality, but you know what I mean? Just
Right,
the detail of it.
right.
It's a fantastic looking film.
Well, and the Satoshi Kon, I was paying attention during the credits, which, by the way, I really like the credits. Um,
Oh,
specific,
you mean how they're on signs?
and at the end, it's just a truck drives in. It's directed by. Um,
Yeah, that was clever. That was
I,
cool.
I dug that, but I was looking at the credits, and Satoshi Kon he's director, co-writer, um, he's co-character designer, and he's something else. So he's all over this. But I think the character designs, for people who aren't really into anime, these are not like shonen-y. Like, this doesn't look like Dragon Ball Z or Naruto. These are kind of just people. I mean, there's a couple of times where their faces get exaggerated, but I mean, there's the actual designs themselves are not really exaggerated.
I also, and it's a difficult thing to critique when you don't know the language and you're reading subtitles, but there were a number of places where I found myself being impressed with the voice actors.
Oh yeah,
And the big one was Hana, which is interesting because I ultimately don't think I liked that character.
I don't like her. I
And we can talk about that here in a second. But what I was very impressed with was especially a part right toward the end where, because that character is overreacting constantly to everything, and you get to the last 15 minutes or so, when he finally sobers up a little bit for a minute and is really leveling with Jin after they meet, what is it? The girl's father.
right, right,
That's the scene where suddenly the voice sounds entirely different. And is of course the same actor, but suddenly he's having to play this character reserved for the first time in the whole, or not reserved, but like just even keel, not like super exaggerated and overly dramatic about everything, and doing, I would say, like his natural voice, because the whole rest of the time he's trying to sound like a woman, and a lot of the time he's sounding like a blubbering, really obnoxious, angry, or sad, but in a really over the top kind of way woman. And now he's just talking in his regular voice, and I was really impressed with that performance.
oh yeah, absolutely. Um, I really like Jin's voice actor as well. I thought he had a fun kind of cadence to his voice. Um, and
So
I
were you
thought the
taken, sorry,
Sorry.
Good.
Well, I was gonna say the couple of times where he genuinely gets emotional, I thought was really really well done.
So in a movie like this, because you certainly have seen more of these kinds of films than I have, do you find Eric yourself being taken out whenever characters are like repeatedly this over the top, like exaggerating about things?
Um, it depends on what it is, really. I not taken out, because that is just kind of an anime thing. But if I don't think it's funny, which in this case for the most part I didn't, I do find it irritating. Um,
See, I was trying not to because I knew it was part of it's part of this tradition, and I really tried as hard as I could to be okay with it. But man, every time the the most minute like not the thing they wanted to happen thing would happen,
yeah.
like if something didn't go exactly Hana's way, he just would freak out completely, and it got really annoying.
Well, it's kind of interesting because Jin is my favorite character of the three of them. This ever becomes an American live action film, Bob Hoskins should totally play him. Um, but I found myself really liking Miyuki, and not even necessarily consciously, just kind of when she wasn't with them, I was like, oh, I really want to get back to Miyuki and see what she's doing. I never had that with Hana. If Hana was not on screen, I was not missing Hana.
Yeah,
And I honestly felt that he had the least interesting backstory of the three of them.
it, it's
His,
kind of it's kind of what I expected.
yeah, whereas uh, I thought Jin's was really interesting because he gives this really sad one, and then I didn't really think it was a lie. I was like, oh,
I
bicycle
didn't
racer,
either.
that's an interesting choice. And then when you find out his real backstory, I was like, oh, that's one kind of interesting and two probably a lot more realistic. Like I almost felt like the story he gives is the kind of backstory you would get for a homeless person in a movie, and then the one here is maybe a little bit more realistic.
Well, I found him to be the most relatable character because he is really angry with the guy. I love that scene at the end where he finds the woman's husband
Yeah.
that stole the baby, and he of course still thinks that it's their baby, and this guy is kind of a deadbeat husband, and he hates him for that because he sees too much of himself in the guy, but you don't know that yet.
Yeah, when he's got the lottery ticket.
Yeah, and I really like that. Well, in both things, because he was a deadbeat husband also, and he had a gambling and a drinking problem.
Yeah.
And so he sees every problem with his own past in this guy. And and so then it also makes a lot of sense that at the same time that he's angry with this guy and he really hates him for all of that, he's also trying to pick him up and force him to do the right thing because he has the opportunity to fix himself and to change. And at that point, Jin thinks that his life is basically over. Of course, everything turns out better for all three of them at the end.
Right.
So ultimately, it's not that way because they all kind of get their respective families back. Hana less so,
Yeah. Um,
but she also has a different sort. Or he has somewhat of a different kind of family dynamic because the other two is actually, one's about his daughter, the other is about her her father, and they both have a lot of thematic things in common with the family that had the stolen baby. Whereas I think part of the problem with it maybe is that Hana doesn't have that relatable thing like they do to the same
no,
degree.
he just kind of got angry and punched somebody because his mom runs, apparently, it looks like, is it an entirely transvestite strip club or dance club or,
And it's not actually his mom.
right. Um,
I mean, that's always in parentheses.
yeah.
Like that's another transvestite, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the one he relates to as mom or whatever. And
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say that for the
oh
audience
yeah.
that hasn't seen the film. Yeah.
But we find out that he leaves because he punched one of the customers, And then they're like, whatever. Like it almost he didn't actually have a problem, whereas the other two did, I guess.
I had a hard time understanding why he couldn't just come back.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Because the guy running the place isn't immediately like saying you have to leave, you're not welcome here. It's like it's been so long that it's water under the bridge.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't entirely understand that, and I'm just not sure what. I mean, I guess the point of the character in the movie is that he provides all of the religious context and also wants to be a mother.
Well, Andy talks about um the guy he fell in love with, and then that guy died, and he's never really
Okay.
felt at home anywhere after that. And so he's just kind of moving around more and more. I don't know thematically where that fits, but that's why
Yeah.
I think that's supposed to be why he doesn't go back. Is he doesn't feel at home anywhere and he just moves around.
Yeah, well, and that is a theme between the three of them that they don't feel at home at their homes, and so I do like the fact that all three of them made the choice to be homeless.
Oh
I think it's really neat that none of them it was at all forced into this lifestyle.
yeah. Um I,
They all seem to have places to go, but it's almost like the theme is between and actually this is where Hana fits in to a degree. They're all embarrassed to go back. Remember the scene where the girl what I'm sorry, what is her name again?
it is
Miyuki.
Miyuki.
Miyuki, yeah, the scene where she tries to call her father,
Yeah.
and the first thing she won't even say anything. He just hears her kind of whimpering on the other side, and the first thing he asks is, "Are you okay?" She could go back home anytime,
Right. Um
and I get the sense the same is true of Jin,
I don't
that
think
he,
Jin can go back home.
but I mean he can go back with his daughter though,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Um
which you get the sense is maybe what ends up happening.
One of the things I wanted to look up was because he says he saves up 30,000 yen for his daughter,
Yes,
and how hard it was to save up 30,000 yen. Well, I wanted to know how much money 30,000 yen is in dollars for like a
did you look at?
reference point. It's about $300. Which I think
I
is,
am amazed that that's all his hospital bill cost.
I was about to say that, but um,
By the way, can I just say real quick, that was a really sad scene.
oh yeah,
I liked it a lot. I mean that he had to give up. I mean, I could have done without all of the tears all over the screen, but that's just a me thing with these kinds of movies. But I mean, just I came to where I really liked Jin, and it was really sad to see him have to give up that
well,
money. But isn't it really interesting? I just thought of this. Isn't it? By the way, I'm liking this movie the more we're talking about it. Can I just say that?
yeah,
I think it's really cool that he saved up that money, and who did he actually hand it to?
his daughter.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, the thing with that scene in particular that really stuck out to me is he said, "When I was gambling, this money was like nothing, and now it took what did he say, like 6 months to save up 30,000 yen."
Yes.
And so I wanted to see how much that is. It's only $300, which I mean isn't chump change, but at the same time, that's like that really it kind of conveys to me like he has nothing. Like if it took him that long to save up $300,
Well, we know they don't have jobs. I mean, where would he even get that kind of money? It's sort of impressive that the way they're living, he was able to come up with that much in that little time.
right? It's just I think it's interesting that it's on one hand it's only $300, on the other hand it's $300.
Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of a homeless person, that's a ton of money, and it also means that he was a decent gambler.
Yeah, or
Like, it means he was actually good at
or
it.
he just blew all his money,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I get the sense that maybe he was good at gambling, but he wasn't good at not spending it all on booze.
or he would be winning and wouldn't stop.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, no, I think there's a lot of really interesting things in this film. It's just it's a really hard film to kind of explain to anybody because it's a film that's like it's about a lot of things, but like it's not necessarily about anything that if somebody were to ask me, what's that movie about? I could, I mean, I guess if you know, family, coincidences, miracles, but like all of the more intricate stuff, like if somebody said, what's it about? I don't know. It seems like it's not a convoluted film. Actually, maybe it may be a convoluted film. It's hard to summarize and explain.
Yeah, it's somewhat difficult to summarize. I think just in that it doesn't make any sense until you say this is a movie where coincidences happen and it's aware of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like plot just explaining this shouldn't work. In reality, none of this should actually come together the way that it does. And the movie is somewhat suspending my disbelief because it's coming out and saying, yeah, this shouldn't work. And the characters in the film are also realizing it. They're like, wait, how are all these coincidences coming together? But I do think that it's cohesive thematically in that it is about one major umbrella kind of topic that it explores, which is what is home.
Right.
It's homeless people looking for their place and ultimately finding their homes. And maybe it's a little bit sappy in places, but I like that by the end, it's not the obvious thing, which is, well, we all already have our home. It's the three of us together, and we're home. I like that it takes them as friends to kind of find their respective homes, but ultimately family in this world is important,
Well,
not just
I
their families together, but there is a blood thing that matters in this movie. And I kind of, I don't know, it resonated with me on at least a level. I think that I became more emotionally attached by the ending because um it wasn't really any of the decisions or choices that people made that led them to the the big climax, which was sort of a run of the mill, run around the city action kind of scene. Um, but it was in the sense of the universe coalesces for them because they all made the right decisions. You know what I mean?
right. Well,
It is kind of a morality tale in that it says these people made the right choices, and this woman that stole this baby, she shouldn't have done that, and that kind of thing.
one of the things that I think is really kind of interesting, and maybe I don't know if this is a cultural thing or if it's just Satoshi Kon but I feel like if I if this movie was made by somebody else or maybe made here, the ending would be, well, we have each other.
Yeah,
Whereas it's almost, you said the baby brings them close together, but it also kind of splits them further apart because
that's right.
I don't get the impression that at least Jin and Miyuki are necessarily going to stay homeless.
No, I don't think they are. I think the whole point of that third act is finding a place for those two people, and I really wonder what the movie is saying about Hana and her and his lifestyle.
Well, it seems he's almost seems like kind of a free spirit. Like it's not
Yeah.
like if he stays homeless, he's choosing to. It's not anything.
Well, he seems kind of content being homeless
Yeah,
to a degree. He's the one of the three of them that kind of like he keeps trying to keep them together as a family. I mean, remember he doesn't want to take the baby to the cops. He just wants to keep it and thinks that they can manage it and has that whole God will provide attitude.
yeah,
Like his religion makes him more comfortable with his lifestyle. It's like I don't need things. I don't need to live the way society tells me to. I have God.
yeah.
God provides. God gave us this baby because we were destined to have it, because we were supposed to. What's really interesting is he finally kind of concedes to them at the end and says, "Yeah, let's just take it to the cops."
Yeah.
And could have done that any time through the whole movie. So there is a little bit of that ambiguity of, well, it's not really fate, because if they had just taken it to the cops and they had every opportunity to, they probably wouldn't have, you know, ran into all those random people
Right.
that kind of change things. But yeah, again, by the end, it really is kind of fate is a thing and nothing happens by coincidence.
Actually, something I briefly want to mention with Hana that I thought was kind of interesting was when he sings The Sound of Music.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I there's not really anything to say about that. I was like, that's kind of interesting that he's singing The Sound of Music. I wouldn't even think. I mean, there would be no reason that movie wouldn't be in Japan, but like it was really kind of weird being like, oh, there's this person with this other language singing this, famous musical song. I thought it was interesting.
I really think this will be my final word on the movie. I really think that the biggest thing to recommend this film is the atmosphere.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the atmosphere and the style. It's not that it's a style over substance movie,
No, not
but
at all.
it's a beautiful film, and it's kind of inviting for a film about homeless people. It never really feels dirty, or
No, and,
dark.
and it and what's weird is it is both of those things.
Yeah,
In a lot of
actually,
places.
something I really want to mention, uh,
We didn't talk about Jin getting beat up in a back alley. I
by just
mean,
some kids.
yeah.
But one thing I really wanted to mention before I forget that is very much a cultural different thing. Um, there were two times where there's naked breasts in this film, and nothing else in this movie. Like in America, that's an R-rated movie immediately. Nothing else in this movie is like that. It's a very different view on that. Like there's two shots where like that, and it's in no way sexual.
No, both times it's
It's nurse.
a mother. It's a mother either nursing or attempting to.
And I feel like that's something we don't really get in America. I feel like we only get that sexualized.
No, and I gotta tell you, I find that kind of refreshing, honestly.
Yeah, well, I think it's so interesting that, I mean, again, I don't know with the subtitles, but it doesn't seem like it's a movie with any swearing. There's no real graphic violence, but there's this nudity, and it's not sexualized at all. And I'm like, I feel like this is a PG movie.
Well, and there's some really, I mean, except for some of the adult themes, with all of the with all the stuff at the like transvestite bar, it feels
Maybe it's an
PG.
80s PG movie.
Because what's interesting about it is it's not that there's not any sex talk in it.
Right.
You know,
I
there
feel like
there
in
is
America
discussion
this would
of
be R, whereas
yeah.
I feel like it's not an R movie, if that makes
No,
any
and
sense.
they're just no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're more open about discussing those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of I just found it a little bit refreshing to see this movie where you have women just out in public nursing, and it's just like a normal thing that nobody even bats an eye at.
Yeah. And the
That's
movie
really
doesn't.
in my view, that's how it ought to be, and I kind of like seeing another culture doing that and going, oh, okay, so there's places in the world where we don't look at a woman weird because she's doing something in public that needs to be done, and there's nothing weird about it because that's nature and it has to happen.
Well, and the way the film's shot, it's not like lingering or leery at that either. It's
No, it's
not
not
in
creepy
any
about
way,
it. It's saying, hey, look at this. No,
this is what
it's
happens.
just there. Yeah,
Um,
I really liked that.
yeah, yeah. So I really enjoyed this film. I think it's a really interesting film.
I like it so much more discussing it.
Well, that's good.
Because while I was watching it, I could not decide what I thought of it. And anyway, I appreciate you picking it, Eric. I always feel like I'm broadening my horizons more and more when I watch when I watch foreign films, especially things that immediately make me feel a little uncomfortable. And this did that.
I'm kind of thinking about putting this into my Christmas rotation.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And by the way, when I say that this made me feel uncomfortable, not so much by the end, but just on the outset, I had to kind of adjust myself a little bit with some of the themes that I'm not used to. And I think it wants you to do. I think at first it makes you feel a little uncomfortable because you're dealing with kind of a part of society that we that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but we need to. It's important. We should be discussing these things. And so then about 10 or 15 minutes in, it's normal. These are the people we're following, and they're kind of compelling.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, well, Eric, thanks a lot for picking that.
All right, yeah.
Next time we're going to watch a really, really interesting movie. Not that I've seen it yet, because the whole point of this is that we haven't seen these yet. But I'm going to assume it's going to be very interesting because I did not know that Harry Houdini ever made a movie. And Eric and I are going to watch the oldest film we've ever done on this show, and we're going to do our first silent film for this show, and it is from 1922, really, really early, The Man from Beyond, which is a just 1 hour film where Harry Houdini plays the main character, and it's a fictionalized film. It's not like a biography thing or anything. I
And I
had
assume
quite
it's not a movie where like it's Harry Houdini playing Houdini.
no. He plays. I mean, he plays an escape artist, but he's not playing Harry Houdini.
Right.
So anyway, I don't know what this is going to be like, Eric, but I was too fascinated by the fact that it was there to not. I was very enticed to watch it.
No, I'm excited. It's going to be really interesting. Did you know anything about Houdini outside just general escape artist, like that kind of thing?
I don't know a whole lot about him.
Because I don't think I even know what he actually looks like.
Oh, okay, I know that, and he was in some Spawn comics.
Well, like I know him like culturally, and like I've seen him portrayed by other actors,
Right.
but I don't know if I've ever really seen Houdini. So it's gonna be
Now you get
interesting.
to watch him for a whole hour. I do know that he actually does some escape artist stuff in this.
I really hope there's something in this that somebody somewhere saw and threw into Spawn, and you're gonna be like, oh, this is referenced in Spawn.
That would be fantastic, but I really doubt that those comics were that subtle. But anyway, that's what we're doing for next time. Hopefully, we'll be back with you in a week. Sorry it's been so long since we put one of these up, but Eric and I had a tough time getting together the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
We will be bringing back Arrow discussions for you in October.
Yep.
Arrow begins, what is it, like the 9th of
I
October?
think it's the 18th.
Oh, is it that late?
I feel like we had this conversation. I mean, I know
I
we had this conversation.
We
I
had this
don't
conversation
remember.
even on the show. I was gonna just look here real quick and see if I could find it, but I'm not sure. Well, anyway, regardless, it'll be mid October, and we'll try to do some more of these Netflix roulette shows for you before then. Anyway, in the meantime, thanks as always for listening. I'm Captain Logan,
And I'm Eric.